When we once entered samadhi and we have a certain experience, and it is the first time we have ever entered it, we will never forget that experience. That stays within our mind. And then, out of consequence of our experience or of our expectation what should happen in samadhi, we are just looking for this experience. And looking for this experience is different. Because we are looking for this experience and forget to do the work that brought us to this experience. And it happens to nearly everyone who has first time experience in samadhi that is so deep, and then he tries for the next month or years to get or reach this experience again. Thanachan Mahabua himself had. I myself had. Took me a year to get back. Thanachan Mahabua, he said, it took him 15 months to go back. And only after 1 year he realized that he was looking for the experience of samadhi and was forgetting the work. And the work is just the word Buddha, or the interest in the breath. And the interest in the breath, when the breath becomes subtle, the interest must rise. So we are not just interested if the breath is coming in or if the breath is coming out, but we are interested in every second how the breath changes. Is it on its height of the in-breath, or is it going falling down? When is the turning point from in-breath to out-breath? And when is the breath out-breath at its height? And so on, and so on. We are just interested in the work. The work that brings us to samadhi is single-pointedness of mind. We are just interested in one point. And if we are interested in the experience we had, forget it. We will never ever get that back. And the next experience of our samadhi will be different. So we better forget the experience. It's past like everything in our life has passed. And only after we entered 1,000 times samadhi, we will see what is the quality of samadhi. We're not looking for this experience because this can happen, or that can happen, or this can happen, or that can happen. That is different. The experience at the moment is different. And it's the same thing when we are just mindful of this one moment. And that one moment is the only moment we are really alive. For the first time in our life, we are living because we are aware of this present moment. Most of the time, we are in the past or in the future, or we are looking for this, or we are looking for that. Or we don't want this, or we don't want that. Most of the time, we are there. So we are never at that one point where we are really living, where we are really experiencing. When I talk about living, then I mean experiencing. And this experience is always it's always exciting and it's always different. That's why we are able to stay in the present moment. Because the present moment itself changes all the time. That's why we can stay with these changes. We have to know, when we do the practice, there are not a lot of things we have to know. We have to know about the changing nature of all phenomena in this world, anicca. We have to know about anatta, not being self, that these things that arise and cease are not self, and we have to be aware of that these things are conflicted is dukkha. All what we attach to, all what we dislike, there is dukkha. Dukkha is not only pain and suffering, dukkha is restlessness of mind, dukkha is just feeling not well, or just feeling uncomfortable, but it can also be big pain, physical or mental pain. That is all dukkha. Dukkha is a container for all these unpleasant things. And it starts just with restlessness of mind. It just starts with being interested in this or being interested in that. We want to know. We want to know, what is it that makes it wrong? We want to know what is it that causes this. We want to know this and we want to know that. But we are never, or we are hardly English words are missing. We are hardly willing to understand what is going on. We just want to know. Once we know, that is fine. That explains the whole situation. And that knowing, and this kind of knowingness, is nothing else than avijja. Knowing wrongly, knowing not in line with the truth. But it satisfies us so much. If we know who gave us this punch, then it satisfies us. If we don't know who gave us this punch, our mind will run around, find for the enemies or whatever. Find for the causes. When we close our eyes, and that's what we normally do in meditation, and we hear a noise, then we want to know what it is. Until we have not known what it is, we will not give up wanting to know. Once we know, we are either afflicted by calmness, because, it's nothing that will harm us, or we are afflicted by anger, because something is disturbing us, or inflicted by fear, because we are afraid, because we assume it's a snake, or if it is a scorpion, or whatever. Wanting to know is not the solution. Staying and experiencing. Just stay and experience. What does it mean? Noise. It's just something that comes into the ear. The ear cannot distinguish if it's a chicken or if it's a snake, or if it's a turtle or that. So who is distinguishing? Something comes through to our sense doors. That is called vijnana. We just know that something has arrived at our senses. Then the senses, because all the senses have some information. The senses with the strongest information, our chitta goes and investigates. So it goes into sankhara or sanya. So it looks it up in sanya, what it is. With the help of sankhara, it will find what it is. And then it makes us either afraid, or it makes us happy, makes us calm or angry. Who wants it? We don't, in the state, we don't want it. In the state of samadhi, or when we train samadhi, we don't want it. So we just don't care. If the chitta, and it is, a single processing machine, it only can do one task at a time. So if we do Buddha, then it can only do Buddha. If it observes the breath at one point, that's why we observe it only at one point. That's why we don't follow it, and we observe it at the point of the nose, where the feeling of the breath coming in or breath going out is strongest. Because we don't have our mouth open. So the breath comes through the nose. And it is a single processing machine, the more we are staying with the Buddha, the less it can go out. The less it can go and get to the senses, to the sense doors and investigate what is there. So the less it can get afraid or angry or greedy. Because if a smell touches our nose, then we might get hungry and we think of eating something. Just realize when you hear something, there's hearing. When you see something, there's seeing. When you touch something, there's touching. When you smell something, there's smelling. When you think something, there's thinking. And that's it. We don't want to know what kind of smell it is. We don't know what kind of sound it is that touches the ear. We don't want to know what kind of touch it is that touches our body. It could be a snake, it could be a rat, it could be anything. It could be a butterfly. We're not interested. We're just knowing the sense contact, if it's strong. And then go back. So what happens if the single processing machine of our chitta stays just with the Buddha or just with the breath? Then all the senses will disappear. And that's what is called one-pointed. Because the chitta does not have any more the time to go out and look what kind of senses are at the door. It has only one task, to stay with the Buddha. It has only one task, to stay with the breath. It can't go out. So when we are close to samadhi, it happens quite often that we lose the sense of balance. The sense of balance is a primary sense. How we sit, how we lie, how we stand. So we lose that. And we think we are standing wrong, or we are lying wrong, or we are sitting wrong. Because not all of our senses for the sense of balance have we looked up. So we might have the impression at the beginning of our samadhi that we sit, crooked. But when we open our eyes, we see that we are completely straight. It's because we do not look up the sense. And the senses of balance, when they fade, we don't worry. If we see it, if we test it out for the first time, that we're still sitting very straight, then there's nothing to worry about. But it tells us one thing, that our mind is getting pretty much focused. Because in order to get this information for the senses, the chitta has to go out quite a bit. It has to go to all the outward points, to give the sense of balance. Of the sitting posture, or the standing posture, or the walking posture. And once the chitta does not go out, and once the chitta is in the state of upachara samadhi, and then it reins it in, then the chitta will wiggle. It will, if you stay at the point of the nose, the chitta will just, like a little needle, swivel around. It will not go out to the senses, but it just will wiggle. And if we can control it so that it stands extremely still, then we can enter one point. So not going out to the senses in any form will help to get to the one-pointedness. Let the chitta just do the one task. And it's good for us. It would be hopeless if the chitta would be a parallel processing machine, that it could do a lot of tasks at the same time. We would not be able to rein it in. But because the chitta is a single process, it can do only one thing at a time. That's how we can rein it in. So that's why we press it, always press it, and always press it, or always lead it back to the point of attention, to the point of focus. When whatever comes in, comes an old experience in, that's past. Comes in the hope that I'm close to it, that's future. Actually, when we think we are close to it, we are far away. We are far away. We already lost the past, and we have to restart over again. And that's what is normally happening. We have to restart and restart and restart. So I hope this example, illustrates the importance of not letting the chitta, not letting the mind going out to any of the senses, being the senses of the body or the other khandhas. For to be able to get one point. Just stay what happened. The knowing nature of the object observed will not cease. And when the breath disappears or the Buddha disappears, the Buddha is so strong that we cannot even think it anymore, because the mind is really focused. It really focuses in. You see it, you really see it, focus in it, like seeing the light through a magnifying glass. It focuses on one point. And where this one point is, of course, extremely hot. Or in our case, it's extremely focused. And you feel that. You really feel it. This process can be long or it can be very quick. It depends on the character of the person. So you really focus in. And once you focus in, you lost all the interest for all the other things. Because that pulls you with. Now when the Buddha stops or when the breath stops, it's our sensation of the breath that stops. It's not that the breath actually stops. It becomes just so subtle, extremely subtle, that we can't pick it up anymore. Then we go to the knowing nature of that the breath has disappeared. Or going to the knowing nature of that what knows that the Buddha cannot be thought anymore. The knowing nature, that is what knows about the quality of the object. And that's where we take refuge. And once we are in there, then we stay there as long as we are able to stay there. When we come out, the world of duality reappears. Then there is some object, and there is somebody who observes this object. So I hope this is clear now. And it's not, don't take it light. It's not an easy task. You have to be serious. And you have to be serious all day long. Whatever other activity you're doing, don't strain your mind. Don't think about it very much. The activities here in the monastery are very simple. One does not have to think a lot about it. Washing the body, one does not have to think. While washing the body, one can still do the Buddha. While sweeping, one can still do the Buddha. The same with walking, and you should do that, especially you should do the Buddha while eating. Don't lose the Buddha while eating. Don't get into the sense. If you really want to, and you will see the mind in the evening wanders off, what is their food, what kind of food will there be tomorrow. It's usual, it happens to everyone. Don't let it go. And then, over the time being, you will get it. the more efficient you are to stay in the present moment of the Buddha, or the present moment of the breath, the quicker you are able to enter either Upachara or Appana Samadhi. Samadhi is not an option. As I said last time, it's not something that we can neglect. Upacharas, at least Upachara Samadhi, we need to be able to distinguish. We need, when we investigate, an objective mind. We cannot be subjective, this we like and this we don't like. We need an objective mind. An objective mind that can see like a scientist can see, oh, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. But he is not attached to if this is happening or that is happening. He just sees and observes these things are happening. But in the process, of the scientist, if he just thinks about his wife or his partner or whatever, or his coffee or his lunch, he will miss the experience and he has to redo it in order to understand. In order to understand, we have to follow every step of this experiment. And this experiment we are talking about us is the experiment of the arising of self. How does this happen? How does all this phenomena, how does this whole world arise? Once we see it, we understand it, we can cut through. If we don't see it, or if we miss most of the part, then we take wrong conclusions. When we miss only a few parts, our conclusions will be still wrong, but they are more close to what will be the truth. However, if we do not catch every point of the process, we will never be able to understand, and this understanding is not taking place in our brains, it's not taking place in our mind, it's taking place in our heart. And once the understanding in our heart has arisen, it will let go on its own. We cannot let go. It's impossible for us to let go. We can choose not to do this, or we can choose not to do that. But we cannot let go. Let go is the function of the heart that understood. And that is Panya. That is development of Panya. So Samadhi, Panya, investigation, dissecting, breaking things down into what it really is. That is the work of wisdom, that is the work of Panya. Wisdom arises in the heart. So, the observer has to observe. And if the observer is not with the object observed, then he will not understand. He will not understand completely. That's why it's so important to have the ability to focus the mind on one object. Because if we want to investigate, we have to focus on one object as well. We cannot divert from this object. Then our investigation will fail. So if we investigate, for instance, a thought, it's pretty difficult, then we have to stay with the thought. And then we will see that after 3 or 4 thoughts, the thought will switch, or will want to switch in a different direction. And we cannot allow that. So our mindfulness has to be extreme. It has to catch everything. It has to catch every movement of the chitta. It has to catch every movement of the mind. And how? If it doesn't catch it, we can do for the rest of our life investigation, but we will not get any insight. We just conclude this and conclude that. We speculate about this and we speculate about that. But we will never know. Knowing is the function of the heart. When I talk about wisdom, I often mention the example of people sitting around a fire. And there are 3 or 4 groups. They discuss if the fire is hot, warm or cold, or any grade in between. Then there's a large group that says it's hot, a large group that says it's cold, a large group that says it's warm. But nobody of them knows. They just assume. Now somebody who comes in with wisdom, he observes what the other people say and say, well, let's touch the fire. See for myself. The moment he touches the fire, he knows for himself that the fire is like that. And that is the wisdom. That is the wisdom of experience. He doesn't, after he touches the fire, he does not have to argue with all the people in that group. Because he knows for himself. And there's no use to convince us or that. He knows for himself, and he's satisfied, and he leaves. And the rest of the group of people are still here in discussing this or discussing that. And that is knowledge. And derive this and derive that. This is a simple example. But now just go out in the world, you know what the people don't know and what they discuss and what they assume and what they hypothesize and. And the wisdom is just the opposite way. Experience it, understand it, and get rid of it. A person who touched one time the fire, he will not put his hand again in the fire. Because it knows it's hot, it's uncomfortable. He doesn't need to do it. A person who doesn't understand the quality of the fire, he will always put his hand into the fire. And for us, it's not so clearly obvious. For us, it's the fire of the sense. That's why we put always our heart. We always put our hand, or in the sense, our heart into the fire of the sense. Burn it up until it really gets hot. When it really gets so hot that we can't bear it anymore, then we put it into cold water. And then we feel relieved. We feel relieved of our anger, or we feel relieved of our greed, and that's why we concluded in the wrong way that this is the relief for our greed or anger. That is wrong conclusion. That is not understanding in line with the truth. Understanding in the line with the truth is seeing how this fire is built up. How it is built up, and why we grab it. And if we experience it in line and we see once we tap into the anger and feel it burning hot inside our heart, we will never do that again. But when we are angry, we tend to go outside. We look for some causes of this anger or for some obstruction or for whatever. Just to blame something outside of us for something that we caused ourselves. That's the way that we will never understand. That's the way that we will never get rid of our anger. Even if we are right, even if we think we have the right, and if it's common in the world that says, yes, you're right to have this kind of anger, it's still wrong in the sense of investigation. It's still wrong in the sense of pattern. As long as we are practitioners, and as long as we have not overcome greed and hate, anger has to be avoided. Emotions of all sorts have to be avoided. We can avoid them the moment when we are mindful, the moment we see them arising, that's where we stop. We just don't let them grow up like an avalanche. A little ball in the snow might bring a whole city to ruin. It's just one little. It's the first step that produces the avalanche. Remember this well. And that's the same thing with our emotions. There's the first start. And the first start takes place within our 5 khandhas. One of the khandha stirs up, touches the next khandha. It's like a row of balls. You excite one of the balls and they all start to swim. Because the balls are touching each other. It's a nice game. And that's the same with the 5 khandhas. There are just 5 balls. One gets excited and excites the other. And that's what we take for real. That's what we call love, that's what we call anger, that's what we call greed, that's what we call whatever we call. Wisdom is the way to get back to the primary causes, to the primary thing. And the primary things that we really can experience are the 5 khandhas. That is Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara and Vijnana. That's the thing that we really can experience. Thinking is thinking. Memory is memory, association is association. Feeling is feeling, and the body is the body. And of course with the body comes the 6 senses. This we can also experience. And that's it. And if we are able to stay with that, with just these 5 khandhas, for a while, we will understand that the whole world outside is made up. It's just made up. Out of the mixture of these 5 khandhas. Or it's like a cook, who has 5 ingredients. He makes all the delicious food in the world out of these 5 ingredients. And we fall for it. It's a new taste. It's a new taste. You have to try that. It's a new taste. And we constantly fall for this magician. This magician who is called Avijja. Who fools us and fools us and fools us. With just 5 ingredients. That's all what he has. But he uses them so well that this whole universe arises in front of our eyes. And we fall for it. Each moment we fall. Yes, I don't want. Or I've done enough. Or I've done this. Or I want this. Or now it's enough. Or now I need some water. Or now I need to go to the toilet. Or now I need to do this. It's a little mockingbird behind our ears. It says something in our ears and we say, yes, Lord, of course. We believe you. Isn't it? Whatever he says, we believe. Yes, of course, that's sure, And we do it. Without even questioning what we are doing, why we are doing, and what the results of our doing are. What are the effects of our doing? He's the master and we are the servants. And we have to obey him. Once we don't obey, he will let us know. He will put us in the Today I'm lacking the word. Was is Folter? Torture. He would put us in the torture room and torture us until we follow his commands. We always say yes. Yes, yes, yes. We never see. Because we never care to look. So when you call Avijja, not only the magician who produces out of these 5 khandhas everything that we experience, he is also, you can call it also, not wanting to know. We just don't care to know what is happening. We just fall for all these different colors of ropes or rabbits he draws out of his head. That's what we interest. How he does it, we don't want to know. Avijja, not wanting to know. not wanting to know in line with the truth. When we do in our course of investigation, in our course of developing Panya, when we boil everything down back to the Khandha, sooner or later we will understand. But, of course, we have to have enough power of mindfulness, not to be fooled around, not to divert while we investigate. Otherwise, the investigation is the investigation of avijja. You have worked hard for 15 years and you have achieved nothing. And you fool yourself how much you know. Because you look up in the text what is written about this and written about that, and what you think or what you might think that you have experienced. And then you think you're this, or you think you're that. Or you think you reach samadhi, or you think you reach the jhanas, but actually have no. So it's a great fooler, it's a great magician. It's a power not wanting to know. The moment we start wanting to know, the moment we start investigate and see what the hell is going on there. All what is there, all what sits there on this cushion, or all what sits there in samadhi, or all what is walking there on the path is Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. And how does all these things appear? How does all these different things arise? Okay. Just like a little baby. A baby who has one toy. And the toy are the 5 khandhas. It doesn't care if it feels dukkha, it doesn't care if it feels sukha, it just wants to play. It's so fascinated by the play of these 5 balls and their interaction. This is the objective nature of karma. It has nothing to do. Avijja doesn't want us to suffer. Avijja doesn't want us to have sukha. It just doesn't care. It just wants to play. It wants to exist. Because when the 5 balls stop, then it feels lost. It feels like it doesn't exist. And it's the same thing when the 5 khandhas stop to exist. Stop to exist for a moment. They all stop. And as long as we live, we'll still come back. And then we see the big difference. Because in Nibbana, there are no khandhas. So in order to enter real Nibbana, the 5 khandhas have to stop to exist for that time. So these things do not belong to us. The 5 khandhas do not belong to us. They are anicca, anatta, dukkha. The 5 khandhas itself are made out of the 4 elements. The fire element, the water element, the earth and the air element. Nothing else. And that are the only tools we have for investigating. For investigating the truth, for finding out the truth. Anicca, anatta, dukkha, the 4 elements, the 5 khandhas. More, we need sati, and we need skillfulness, mind, skillfulness, and investigative methods to boil them down to this. That's all what we need on the path. That's all what we need to break all these big views that we have, these big conceits that we have. Break them down. When we ask ourselves what is conceit, what is view, break it down. Is it sanya or is it sankhara, or is it a mixture of sanya and sankhara, and how many parts of sankhara are in there and how many parts of sanya are in there? This we call conceit, this we call view. This we call self. What is self? What is self? Is it the body? Yes, of course. Because if the body dies, we die. The chitta is something that never dies. The chitta is the driver of the car, and the body is the car. And the chitta is the driver. Now, ask yourself, is the body or is the driver and the car one and the same thing? So when the car goes wrecked, who is responsible for it? Is it the car or is it the driver? It's the driver. So it's the chitta. The chitta is responsible for wrecking the body. And is responsible for causing the karma. And then once we have eliminated the investigation of the body, and the investigation of the body is the main topic. It's the main topic in any Thai forest monastery or Thai forest tradition. It's only this kind of topic that is taught. Why? Because it's so important. Why? Because it bothers us till the stage of anagami. The anagami is the first person who can let go of the investigation of the body. So he has still the work to do with the four nama khandhas, the four mind khandhas. That is Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. So, until we are not anagami, we still know we have to do the work of the body. Investigating the body, inside out, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, from small to gross, from subtle to gross, from gross to subtle. You do it today, tomorrow, next month, next year, and so on. This is the only topic. Because the body is the earth of greed and hate. It nurtures. Is it right? It is the nutriment for the greed and hate. So once the body is finished, greed and hate disappear. So that now I've talked only about two aspects, samadhi and panya of the path. We should not leave out the precept, morality, virtue. The 5 precepts are a must. Whoever stays in this monastery or is allowed to stay in the monastery, he has to follow the 5 precepts. They are not an option. They are not even an option for human beings in the world. If they want to stay a human being, then it's not an option to neglect the 5 precepts or the 5 rules of virtuous behavior. Because keeping the 5 precepts, if we keep the 5 precepts, then and only then we can call ourselves a human being. A human being. Somebody who does not keep the 5 precepts will lose his rights to be born as a human being. This is a foundation. This is a foundation, it's a must for every human being that wants to stay a human being or does not want to lose its birthright of a human being. And of course, it's a must for the people who want to find the path. In the long run, we have to increase our virtuous behavior. With the 227 rules for the monks or 330 for the nuns, the Lord Buddha gave us the compound or gave us the fence. As long as we walk within this fence of the precepts or higher virtue, then we will be able to make the way out. And that's the same the Lord Buddha saw the same thing for the human beings. So that's why he said, for most of the human beings that cannot go on the path of practice, just take up these 5 precepts. Just don't lose them. Just don't go against them. Because you don't want to lose your right to be born as a human being again. Don't play around with it. Take this serious. So Sila, Samadhi and Panya is also called the Eightfold Path. It's the Eightfold Path that leads us to the end of dukkha. So we cannot neglect any of these. Neither can we neglect Panya, nor can we neglect Samadhi, nor can we neglect the virtue. They are all a must. And there's another must. There's another column. That column is called generosity, respect, and gratitude. If you do not have that, if you do not have enough generosity or respect or gratitude, we will not be able to go the path for a long time. If we do something good, if we are generous with other people, people will support us. And will support us as long as our karma will last. So, if we just gave a little in our previous lives and kept most of us for us, then if you become a monk, it will be extremely difficult. You might go on alms round, but you don't get anything in your bowl. It happened at the times of the Lord Buddha, and it happens here. Some people get a lot, and some people get little. Even if the same kind of people are offering. They just oversee that person. And that is karma. So if you don't have enough generosity, enough gratitude for what is given to us, that we are satisfied or we're grateful for what is given to us, not that we have a right for it. And respect for the teacher or the worldly teacher or the spiritual teachers, or respect for our parents or for anyone who does some beneficial things to us. This is another. That's not an option. These things, these 4 columns are not an option. We have to have them developed to a certain degree to be able to go on the path. If you would not have been developed them in the previous lives, you would not have found the way here in this monastery. And this, how much and how long you have to develop will determine your stay, how long you can stay. That has nothing to do with the teacher that kicks you out after a while. It has to do with your own self, with your own karma that you created. You find fault with this, or you find fault with this, and then you have to go. Or this is not the right teaching, this is not what I want, this is too strict, and this is too strong, or this is, just going against my characteristic tendencies, and then you will leave. And in the end, respect, gratitude, and generosity has not given you the opportunity to stay long. So this concludes, actually, all the things that we need to develop on the path that leads out to dukkha, that leads to deliverance, that leads to freedom. And one more thing about freedom. The freedom that we will gain is not the freedom of the senses, is not the freedom of the khandhas. It's not the freedom of this body. It's the freedom of the mind. Or it's the freedom of the heart. Because as long as we still live, the body will work, and the 5 khandhas will work. And they will produce positive effects or negative effects. They will produce pleasant effects or unpleasant effects, depending on the karma. Because we have put this avallas into motion, and this avallas will run its own path, the path of karma. So the freedom that we gain will be the freedom of the mind that completely understands and completely sees through the nature of these things, through the nature of the 5 khandhas. Sees, completely understands anicca, anatta, dukkha. Completely understands that they're all made out of these 4 elements. If we want to get rid of our unpleasant feelings that arise within our body of old aging, sickness and age and death, we will not be able to do that. An arahant has to experience death. He has to experience aging. And he has to experience pain. But the pain is not the pain of the heart, it's the pain of the body. It's the unpleasant feelings of memories, it's unpleasant feelings that just automatically come. It's the unpleasant feelings that arise with the karma. So, and with this I conclude this talk. Now don't forget, the mind is a simple process. But put it just on the one time. Buddha are the breath, coming in and coming out. So if you change the point of observation when the breath, you will change the mind, you will encourage the mind to go out. You will encourage the heart to go here and to go there. That's why we stick to one point. And the point best suited for the samadhi practice, for observing the breath, in-breath and out-breath, is the point of the nose. No other point. We don't go to any other point. So get there. Do whatever is necessary to get there. It gives you a certain reassurance that you are not looking for the wrong thing. It's not understanding yet. But in order to be able to develop wisdom, and we have to develop it, it's not automatically within us. It's a completely different approach from the West. Because we don't go with our mind onto these things. We go with our heart. It's much more closer to the really to the scientific approach to observe something without knowing what is going to happen. That is the closest. But, trying to understand, to look up in books, to talk to other people, to get their experience, and then conclude from their experience to our experience, and then conclude we are this or we are that, we are just fooled. When we are this or when we are that, when we have reached this stage or that stage, we know. And this knowing, like I said with the example of the fire, nobody can take away from us. We just know, within ourselves. That's why the Lord Buddha said, Ehipassiko. It can be seen for yourself. He doesn't say that we need to go to the Lord Buddha to testify or to assert it. Because once you know, you don't need any assertion. You don't have any doubt. And that is something that we have not been trained to. We have trained to think and conclude. And the more people believe this, then the more safe we will feel. If we come up with a new theory and the people, are criticizing, then we feel pretty unsafe. And that shows you. This feeling of doubt or feeling of not safe shows you that you're on the wrong track. Just do it again. Observe it again. You observe it one time and you observe it 100 times. You observe it maybe 1,000,000 times, and only with 1,000,001st time you understand. Before that, you have to observe. But after 10 times our mind says, made the conclusion, that's like this. And that's where we stop, and that's where our practice ends. And it certainly does not end in Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, or Arahant. It just ends in our conclusion that we are, or that we probably are, Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Arahant. And that's a whole difference.